if a guy doesn't have a want to, you can't motivate that. If a guy's looking for a downloadable PDF, if he's looking for something free, short, quick, you work too hard, too long. There ain't no shortcuts in this thing. So first of all, if a guy doesn't have a want to, and he doesn't think that he has anything to learn, he's out. That ain't going to work. You could be Tony Robbins or Jocko Willink or anyone in between. It's just not going to matter until they have a want to. And sometimes I'd say they're not ticked off enough. For me, I started to get ticked off the more I looked at my life and said, boy, you've really done nothing. You've really been just going through the motions. And so for me, it was a healthy, holy anger that said, oh, we're going to do something about this. And if a guy doesn't have a want to, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of our series called Game Changers. And I'm privileged to have a guy today who I've gotten to know through some mutual friends, and I've watched his work and become quite an admirer of what he's doing. His name's Jarrett Samuels, and many of you may know him. He is the founder of the Pursuit of Manliness podcast and movement. He's created this almost 7 years ago. He has a passion to equip and challenge men to raise the standard, as he says, of what it means to be a man of God. And I love that Jarrett's got his standard interview podcast. He's got one called this theme called The Quiet Place. He's got one called In the Garage, where he does a quick bit out of the Bible on podcast. And so he's doing a lot of different things. He's the founder of what's called Tribe, which is many men, hundreds of men throughout the country, maybe even the world, who have bonded together and had created this community, this brotherhood through Zoom and through these events that he has, these men's gatherings once or twice a year. And so I'm privileged to have Jarrett Samuels here as a guest on Last in Line podcast. Jarrett Samuels from Pursuit of Manliness, welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Thanks, John, for having me, brother. I appreciate it. Glad to finally connect like this.
Yes. Man, we had a phone call a little while back, and you were very encouraging and kind of talked me through a few things when I was starting out. You've been doing this almost 7 years, doing Pursuit of Manliness podcast, and now you've got like 3 little themes, different themes that you put out weekly. That's, man, I love the In the Garage and those kinds of things, and this quiet life that you've created. And I don't know if I feel like that's fairly new. Did you talk about how that came about, doing the quiet life portion?
The truth is, I don't want to do any of this stuff. Like, I don't like video. I started out blogging, and I'm a terrible writer. I am a terrible writer, but that's all I knew to do. So I realized at some point, like what we're doing here, to give a little more credibility to what you're doing, people need to know that you're a real human and exists. So for me, that 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 11-12, live a quiet life, I'm like, oh, I'm good with that. If there was any positive for me for COVID, it was that we were all quote unquote sheltering in place. I didn't have a problem with that. You tell me stay home, I'm good. So just that idea that, man, just working hard, keeping your nose down. I'm blue collar, that's where my background from. Southeast Iowa, factory town and stuff. So, this whole idea where like what we're doing and you got to brand something, it's totally out of my element, but boy, if God calls you to it, he'll take care of those details.
Man, for somebody that maybe seems like, you're not necessarily a self-proclaimed, people guy and out in front and really, hey, listen to what I have to say kind of guy. You've done really well, and man, the consistency is there, and you've got a following now with Tribe and with the, your community that you've built with Pursuit of Manliness. Was there anything in your life, just kind of digging into who you are, man, anything in your life that was sort of the hinge point for you starting this, to just kind of, you got in the mirror one day and had to get real serious with yourself?
And they're absolutely, the day my son was born is January 14, 2013. And I had 2 daughters. I had been in ministry for a while and married to my wife, and nothing bad, just kind of going through the motions. And the day he's born, and he was, I think he's about 8 years from we have 2 daughters, so 8-year difference. So he was a surprise, and so I was out of the baby game for a minute. So I didn't know how this works, so the baby's born, they flip them around in the tub, like their hamburger meat, and the nurse says, "I need you to come with me." And I thought, well, okay, this is different. We get on the elevator with him. We go up to the NICU. I didn't even know where I was at. It's about 4 a.m. and all these nurses come in and start working on him. Long story short, he's got a collapsed lung, and there's all these things, and they call it failure to thrive and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And man, I just started praying like we all do, man, just firing off prayers, popcorn prayers, and I'll never forget praying, God, if you help this little boy fight, I'll fight. And John, I thought that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, because there was no fight in me, but I'm just imploring God, like, do something. Right. So we go through the NICU, and it's not the worst. There's people that have worse stories, but in the moment, your story is the worst story because you're living it. And fast forward about 2 years later, I'm watching him get up on this little step stool and put a basketball in a hoop. And I was like, this is cool to have a kid do what I like to do. And I've rarely had this happen in my life. So I'm not saying this is the norm for me. It was as if God came and sat next to me on that couch and affirmed, like, this is pretty cool. And I remember those words, God, if you help this little boy fight, I'll fight. And I'm telling you, like, chills ran through me. And I thought, oh, we're about to get real uncomfortable. And for the next, till today, it's still been going on. God just Rubik's cubed my life. He took me from a town in Iowa that we lived in, moved us to a city, and I'm not a city guy, but now I live in one. Ministry, everything was he just Rubik's cubed the whole deal. And in that process, there was this stirring that, man, I need to wake up. There's a lot of life to be lived, and I had this idea that just like showing up to work every day and not doing anything too bad, like things would just magically get better. And there developed a fight in me that I had never had before. And I kindle that fire every day just to keep that going. So for me, that day, I'll never forget it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I kind of, you hear about somebody that sort of has these aha moments in their spiritual life, or just as a man. And a lot of times we get real Christian through catastrophe, and we get real, something horrendous happens and we just do a 180 and we're like, okay, that was the wake up call I needed. And that happened to me, but sounds like to you, or sort of what happened to you, it wasn't necessarily a bomb going off or your family imploding. It was what I think a lot of guys might be in right now, is just that everything, nothing's a disaster, but nothing's just extraordinary. And I'm maybe just kind of sitting back. I'm on the team, but am I really playing a role? And so I wonder if there are guys out. I know there's got to be guys out there that are in the same situation. That, what do you say to them that sort of gets that fire lit because you had that moment where you felt like God's presence was just right on top of you and was like, hey, remember what you said about when he was born, and remember what let's get this thing fired up. What if they don't have that lightning bolt God moment? I mean, what would you say to them for them to be like, hey, let's light a fire under myself here?
Well, I remember, that stirring that was kind of taking place. And I had this, I remember texting a friend saying, man, we need and I didn't know at the time that anything even existed. So maybe I was just completely naive to the Christian man space or whatever. And I said, we need something for guys, like where we can talk, Bible, but guns, but, all these things. And I didn't have a clue what this was, and somehow come up with the name Pursue Manliness, because I know I desperately needed that. And so I created the Facebook page, which was dumb because what was I going to put on it? And I got a blog site, Weebly blogs. I paid my $50 where it was. And I sat on it for a couple of days. And I remember telling my wife, hey, I'm thinking about starting this thing. Now, it was a lie because I had already technically started it, but nobody knew it existed. And I said, for those guys and stuff, and she was sitting in the living room with me when I'm telling a story. And I'm thinking in this moment, my wife and kids are going to have this, when the Grinch stole Christmas and he brought all the presents back, they're going to just get around me and be like, our dad is here. This is the guy we've been waiting for. No, she looked over her shoulder at me because she said, well, I don't know about that, but if you want to practice your manliness, our toilet is leaking right now. And I thought, that is not at all what I thought you were going to say, but she's right. We can say a lot of things. It's what we're going to do. Like, if you have to tell people you lost weight, you haven't lost any weight. Yeah. You will know there's a difference in your life when other people start to notice the difference. And so it takes a while. If you've walked in this miry muck for 12 years, it might take 12 years to get out of it, but you're not going to get to that 12 years if you don't start today. You just got to do something today. Do the next right thing. get a little anger in you to say, I'm not going to live like this no more. I'm not going to waste any more time. I don't know if I got 50 more years or 50 more minutes. Either way, I'm going all in. And so for me, that was kind of like, you know what? She's right. And I'm going to prove her wrong. And I'll tell you, we have a different marriage, different home because of that healthy stirring and her really, she even realized it, but calling me out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm I see, and it's refreshing that there's this many, I feel like, men's movements restoring masculinity throughout the country. We've got a lot of mutual buddies, and I know we've got a lot of guys that are following different groups and really keeping up with the content. And what I like about yours is it's faith focused, and there are some others that are too, but you really blend a lot of, outdoors, faith, just guy stuff. And you're pretty transparent about the fact that you're not into this branding yourself. You're not really a public figure. You're not trying to be an influencer. You don't need a check mark by your name in Instagram, right? So you're a little different than what I see even in some of the faith circles, which I relate to what you're saying. Because, man, I've written some books, but I still suffer from that. I'm not really a writer guy. I'm kind of that guy. But so you started Tribe, how far into the Pursuit of Manliness?
Well, I started Pursuit of Manliness technically December of 2015.
Right.
So I don't know if anything happened other than me getting social media accounts. And on January 1st, I made like my first post as if all the men were coming out of the woods going, thank you for that. Again, I'm delusional. So It took a long time for that to happen. About a year or so. I mean, at first I did it anonymously for a long time because I was like, man, I'm not the guy for this. When I came to where I'm at today, the church in Indianapolis, I thought I need to tell the elders this is what's going on. So I told them, I'll take it back. I told them because my first podcast guest, he mentioned my name within like the first 2 minutes. And I thought, I don't even know how to edit this thing. So I'm done now. I told them and they said, oh, that's fine. And so at that point, that was about 2017. And then it got to the point where, I mean, come on, I don't want to just rinse and repeat. I'll say again, I'm not trying to draw people to myself. Listen, there's days I don't even like my own personality. So I'm definitely not trying to win you to me. So I thought, what do guys need? Well, what do I need? I need to get around better men. I need to get around men who will challenge me and raise the standard of my life. And so I had sat at a Starbucks with a friend of mine once. We kind of kicked around like, man, we need to grow our young men. And we had this idea, and it's crazy because what I thought it was going to be and what it is are really two different things. And, and it really became down to, can we connect men across the country and just grow them spiritually? Let's just get them to Jesus. Let's be guys. Let's talk about guy stuff. We like all the things that non-Christian guys like. We just like them in the context of a biblical worldview. Yeah. And so we had these talks, these conversations. In the first Tribe session, I started it with 10 guys. It was free. I said, hey, I'll give you the stuff. And some of them were at our church, whatever. John, the first like month and a half, 6 of the 10 guys quit. And I thought, this ain't going well. This is not a good thing. And it's supposed to go 6 months. I made it go 5 because I couldn't take it any longer. It was too painful. Wow. And well, I'll tell you what, the Lord just kept building. And that's why I tell guys, when you start things, you have to learn your own voice. You have to get your own narrative. One of the best things I ever did was take a month off of this whole thing. And I took a month off in December of 2019 and just kind of get my mind and heart right. And it was like the Lord just, again, he just, his timing is perfect. So now it's, as you know, like what you're doing, it spreads like wildfire. So
that's crazy. And I'm glad you said that because I mean, this is not about me, even though it's my podcast, but I feel like it's resonating with some things that I was verbalizing earlier to my wife. I'm like, bro, it just sometimes feels like crickets when I'm talking, it just feels like this thing. I'm like, what am I even doing? And I've had people even tell me like, dude, you're meant to do, like, you're good at, like, this is something you should keep doing. And I only bring that up, not to say anything about me, but somebody out there's listening. They're in a job right now where they feel like they got a headache from beating their head against the wall so much, or they got a spouse where they just keep trying and nothing seems to work. But man, there is a harvest that is coming. But like you said, God's timing's perfect. Like had he had given you what he, has given you now back then, you may not have been ready. I may not be ready right now. Who knows? And so I have I wanted to ask you too about what would you say, given that this is a game changer theme this month, like how has the tribe that you created, and obviously it's grown to way more than 10 guys and 6 who quit. Like it's grown to more than that. what's been a game changer personally for you by just this thing getting to where it is and just seeing what you've seen through guys and through yourself?
Well, I think in the early days, you're carrying the community in a lot of ways because you have this vision for what you want it to be. And like you said, there's many days, and my wife can attest this, that I'm like, what's the point? Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't need to do this. I have a career. I have other things I could be doing. And sometimes you make a post or a podcast or an Instagram or you're like, nobody even liked it, or nobody even cared, right? Did it even matter? But the truth is there are guys that are always kind of hanging back. They're always kind of watching. And so again, you don't know. God will take care of those details. But for me, it got to the point, one of the sessions where I didn't have to carry I didn't have to carry the community anymore. And not that I was really doing that, but I was trying to like always weigh
facilitate,
in. Yeah. So I said, here's the deal. You all get to hear from me enough. Like I preach on the weekends. I have a podcast. So when we get into these like Zoom calls and stuff, I participate like everybody else. I'm one of many. So whatever we got, I'm one of those guys. I started off, I tell them what the question is. We've already talked about it during the day. I pray and I hit mute. And sometimes I hit mute and it'll be quiet forever until somebody finally jumps in. But hey, it's like we're sitting in a room together and I'll lean in and participate. But there's been calls where I've said nothing other than get it started and end it. But I need to learn as well. And there's a tremendous humility there. It's not a mastermind group. It ain't me getting like notes for messages or anything. It's me just learning from guys, and God speaks through everybody. So we tell every guy, listen, man, you have something to offer. And if you withhold it from us, you're robbing us from maybe something that the Lord needed us to hear. Because it's inevitable. That guy that never says anything, he'll speak up on a call and you're like, doggone it, we needed that. And you're writing it down. Right. And so but you're going to labor. Like there's sweat equity that has to go into it. If the Lord would have sent me a herd of humans the first time I did try, boy, I'd have thought I really did something, wouldn't I? Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, I thought, boy, these guys are just drawn to me. No, you got to you got to work and keep what you've been entrusted with. And so he said, hey, you're faithful with this number. Let's go to this number. Well, and then that just keeps growing. So.
Yeah. I mean, you just work the field, man, just work it and let God bring the rain, really. And it's encouraging to watch because, I mean, I listen to a lot of guys and this isn't a rah-rah session, but I will say like there are very few that are as like real and authentic as you come across. And that's, man, that draws people in, man, because that's who we are. Like that's who the listeners are. And so what do you like most about the podcast? Like, would you say that your personality has evolved from the guy that would really rather not talk in front of anybody? Like, what have you gotten good at? Are you seeing yourself kind of come out of this shell? I mean, granted, it's been 7 years. I would hope so by now, but what do you like most about yourself that's developed?
Now, I will say this, I have an unfair advantage. I get to speak every weekend. And so I think there is some, there's sharpening that happens with that, just delivering. And I think I'm a terrible writer. I may not be that good of a speaker. I speak fast. I don't enunciate well. People are like, where are you from? Like like it's all over the place. I get it. Like I totally understand it. I was last in my class in high school. Okay. There ain't nothing special about me. And I've tried to be as authentic and real as possible, because if John, you and I run into each other at the grocery store, you'd be like, yeah, he's the same guy. I've had guys come to our church going, I want to visit that church. And you see on Sunday, you're like, yep, that's the same guy. Like there ain't nothing special about me. There is about Jesus. So I'm going to try to get you to him, but I'm going to try to be just real. Hey, whatever, shortcomings, things that go well, whatever. Yeah. So as far as the podcast, one, it's stuff like this. You and I, had we not created Instagram accounts, who knows if our path would have ever crossed in this world, I mean, so God knows everybody. I'd say first and foremost, you get to meet some incredible human beings. Second of all, I think I get to say some things through a podcast that a lot of guys in different roles can't say because they'll lose their job or they'll have, they'll have a big uproar at their church. So I feel like I can say that. I can say, and I'm not saying anything offensive. I'm just telling you the truth. I'll tell you why people say what they say, or why you don't come to church, or I'll say why, these things are happening. And I'm not always right. And I'll have people who will, give feedback, and that's fine. So I think too, is really thinking about what you're saying. Like, do you really stand on conviction, or are you just saying something to try to get someone's attention? Yeah. Well, I need to really think about what I'm saying, because this stuff will live out there as long as someone has a hold of it. So we're always being grown, man. And what happens today in episode, whatever it is, hopefully is significantly better than episode, 1 through 10. I hope.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, no doubt. And I like that because, you mentioned you're kind of saying what we're thinking that we may not always get to verbalize in every environment that we're in. So we appreciate, someone that is a voice. And that's what I try to do is just facilitate. Like you say, you lead people to Jesus, and I just want to lead the conversation here with you and other people and get out of the way, man, because you guys have great stories and you guys are have done a lot of amazing things. And man, what are you seeing, over these years? You've seen the tribe is growing. You're watching guys' lives change. I guess before I ask this question, I want to ask one other one. What is the biggest need from guys to change? Like, where's the biggest area? Where's the biggest vacancy in us as men to really step in full stride, full rhythm to our calling as men?
You have to want to. If you don't want to, it ain't going to happen.
Sure.
John, you can write all the books, and I can record all the podcasts, and you and I can post till we're blue in the face, and Instagram says if a guy doesn't have a want to, you can't motivate that. If a guy's looking for a downloadable PDF, if he's looking for something free, short, quick, you work too hard, too long. There ain't no shortcuts in this thing. So first of all, if a guy doesn't have a want to, and he doesn't think that he has anything to learn, he's out. That ain't going to work. You could be Tony Robbins or Jocko Willink or anyone in between. It's just not going to matter until they have a want to. And sometimes I'd say they're not ticked off enough. For me, I started to get ticked off the more I looked at my life and said, boy, you've really done nothing. You've really been just going through the motions. And so for me, it was a healthy, holy anger that said, oh, we're going to do something about this. And if a guy doesn't have a want to, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. And the fire in the belly is huge. And you got to have, and the buzzword is find your why. And I don't disagree with that, but I think it's got to be, look, once you establish that, like you gotta have some pieces in place to be able to walk this out and really make some changes, make some adjustments. And that's where resources like you or I come in and you sort of, we once these guys are locked in and like, look, okay, yeah, I'm mad enough. Like I've heard people say, in order to quit the sin, you got to hate the sin enough to quit it. And so you got to just be fed up, basically sick and tired of being sick and tired, and then step into, because that becomes your why. Like I'm not happy with, who I see in the mirror. And I think we do have a lot of guys that are in that phase of almost ready to step out and just start making changes, because culture is what they're wanting us to not, like they're wanting us to be okay with how they've labeled masculinity now. But I think, people like you and some other folks that are out there are opening our eyes, guys' eyes, to being like, I think it's okay to be masculine. I think it's okay to be a dude. Like it's okay. It's not toxic. Look at this. Here's 4 gospels that prove it, something like that. So are you getting new Christians? Are you getting I don't know if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you getting non-Christians that are like, hey, I'm just going to see what this is about? Or are you getting that real green guy along with some of the other more seasoned Christians, like joining your group? Like, what are you seeing?
It's in a unique way. And I think this is a really good thing, but it hit me one day. I was like, this is what's happening. One, we're getting a lot of military and first responder people. And I think it's the brotherhood. They had the brotherhood at one point. They like it. They're in environments where they have a little bit of that community, but it's not a godly community. And so they get around guys and be like, okay, he's a real guy. Like these are normal guys. They, whatever. We do get, I would call green people, as you'd say. They're kind of starting out on their journey. They're learning. Maybe they're cracking the Bible open for the first time. We've had some guys who they're like, I just don't read this thing. I know. Well, we can rectify that. We can fix that. We're very blessed to have some very seasoned guys who are very mature in their faith. And man, that's just so good. Almost virtually sitting at their feet when they make any kind of content. You're like, man, that's really good.
Hey, do yourself a favor when you get done listening to this episode and go check out my sponsors on their websites. Those links will be in the show notes. But I want to thank the following for supporting Last in Line podcast. I want to thank Armored Nation Coffee. I want to thank the folks at Do Work That Matters. I want to thank Kevin Fulton over at Lead Like Lions. Thank you to Gridiron Coffee. And thank you to Cowboy Revolution Apparel. Those are just a few, and we're adding to the list, but these are ones who have started with us at ground zero and are sticking with us till the end, hopefully. So go check out their website, get some of their products. Now back to the show.
What's interesting is we'll have guys who will come in contact with the Pursuit of Manliness because of the beard or the word manliness. And then they see the first post about Jesus or a scripture and say, hey, I thought this was a manly thing, not a Jesus thing. And I'm like, man, just stick around, just hang around, see what you think.
Yeah.
Because I do think we've given a bad perception of what a Christian is. Yeah. And man, don't try to be somebody else, but be you, and I think if you're being yourself and God's DNA is written all over you, he's only made one version of you. You're the only one who possesses that DNA. Then be you 100%. You and I could post the exact same piece of content at the exact same time of day. And you and I will just reach different people. God uses us all in unique ways. So be you, but along the way, he wants to reach all those individuals as well. And so there'll be people who'll be like, well, I thought this was this. There'll be people who want nothing to do with this because it says manliness or a beard. You're not going to win everybody, right?
Right.
So you
of
say,
course.
hey, man, I know what target I'm aiming at. That's what I'm going for. But and we've seen a wide variety, but guys are outside the country who are hungry for this. I remember our men's retreat last year. There was a guy from Australia that signed up for it, obviously online, but I'm thinking that whole country was locked down and this guy's going to sign up for a men's retreat virtually. Jesus will get where he needs to get. You can't stop him. So
that's right. Well, it's funny because we actually have a couple of mutual friends, which is funny. Clint Hader has lives in Houston, goes to my church, and he came up to your. And then of course I'm repping Randy's company, Armor Coffee, and I know you're a big Armor Coffee guy. You're probably drinking some right now, unless your wife's cut you off at this time of night. But well, so. You mentioned something about the guy that comes and says, I thought this was a masculine deal and it turns out to be a faith deal. Where did we get it wrong? Why do we have that perception out there that church is fluffy and Jesus is blonde hair, blue eyed, and just kind of touching people on the nose as he walks through town?
Well, I go on this one for a long time working at a church, but I would say, first of all, as men, we're lazy. We're naturally lazy. We like to do what we like to do. I'd like to sit by the fire pit, or I want to eat cheeseburgers. We're normally going to take the easy way out. So what happened in our churches a lot, and I was a children's pastor for about 15 years. They had no problem getting women back there. No problem. Wow. So I decided we're going to turn this thing into Promise Keepers. And I went after every guy I could find. And once the men started to show up, I thought of this today. I was thinking about this dude today. His name's Todd. Back in the day, I was at church camp with Todd. Todd was a good dude. He's a dad. And I said, man, why don't you volunteer for my ministry? Like, we're hitting it off. He's like, no, man. He's like, I'm a beer drinking, card playing guy. And I said, could you not do that on Sunday morning? That's all I want you to do. I don't care what you do during the week. If you're a beer drinking, card playing guy, that's fine. The guy came and we had like a 5-gallon bucket where all the small group stuff was. He flipped the bucket over. He'd sit on the bucket and he would just talk to the kids. It was like a 1-point lesson, real basic. And he had 2 rows of kids sitting around him, and his son was in that group. That guy made a tremendous impact on those kids by just being present. And men don't realize that. They're neglecting that. So when they're present, what happens? Somebody's going to step into that role. And our women are nurturers. They are going to fill that role. They are not going to let that ball drop. However, when the guys do show up, because that has happened so long, we neuter them. We basically come in and go, hey, don't, just sit there. You can pass the offering plate. Man, I can get a 7-year-old to pass the offering plate, right? These guys can gut deers, reshingle their house. They can fix engines. They can go do whatever. But when they come to church, we neuter them and say, hey, just be, and I'm like, it's enough of that. You know what? That may work for some guys, but that's not who I am. And I don't think that's who you are. So I will never apologize for taking a stand on conviction. I'll never apologize for mowing my grass and paying my bills and loving my wife and kids. Like, I'm not backing down on that. I don't even talk about toxic it's to me, it's like fiction. I don't do fiction. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm not apologizing. I'm not budging, but given the opportunity, hey man, I'd love to talk to you about why I believe that. And the Lord has provided some of those opportunities, but like what you're doing, guys will come in contact with you, I'm sure, and go, oh, wait a minute. I think this guy's one of those Bible guys. Yep. Hang around and you may find that perception was not reality. And let us tell you what the truth is.
For sure. Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think the carrot has been dangled for culture, the doctrine of popular culture. It's been dangled out there for guys that are on the fence. And now the world is saying, you don't want any part of that. Like, this is not, you can't be a Christian, and a man. Like, it's a dichotomy, and you don't, you got to pick one side or the other, and it's not. And so that's why I see a lot of you guys, you, me, different guys throughout the country. And I hope it's rippling, because we're starting to see the tide change a little bit. We're starting to get people's blinders off and go, look, we can love Jesus, and we can, if we have to get stern with somebody and be truthful about something and take a stand for something, we can. It doesn't make us less of a Christian. It doesn't make us a weenie. Like, we're not toxic, and we're not weak. So, man, I'm glad you said it, because I know you could probably go for hours on that, and you probably preached several sermons on that. I don't know, but what's a thing that would, aside from if it's a guy that doesn't really know not sure about God, and you're a God podcast, you're a faith group, so aside from that, what's a hang up with guys? Let's say we're faith strong, we got a couple friends, we got a decent marriage, like it's not a grease fire, right, in our family, we're doing okay. What would prevent me from wanting to join a community like Tribe? Or what would be a barrier in my own mind that would just be like keeping me on the sidelines from just taking that step in?
If they're honest with themselves, they're going to say it's pride and insecurity. The pride is, man, I don't want to admit that I don't have this figured out. I would never want to admit that I'm not as good as I think. We, in our homes, we try to pretend like we have it all together. Like, your wife and kids know you don't. Like that's over. Stop doing that. And the insecurity is, we got some scars and some broken bones. There's some guys with some dad issues. There's some guys with some, still they peaked in high school. That's as good as it's ever going to get. There's some guys that their career stinks. There's some guys who are addicted to, whether it's pornography or alcohol or drugs or food or whatever, and they're addicted to their hobbies or whatever. And there's some insecurities there that, man, you might try to change me. Me changing you is the least of your concerns. What you need to be concerned about is what God wants to do in you. And he wants to do something far greater than you could ever ask or imagine. And that was one of my things. Like, man, I don't know about, church and all, and I was raised in church. I was at least conditioned to be mindful of it. But, when you start getting there, you say, oh man, I'm gonna have to give up this, or that. There's freedom. There's so much freedom there. And like you talked about, like we have a bad PR team for heaven. We got like fat babies on clouds and diapers playing the harp, and hell's where there's a tailgate party. I'm like, right. I want to read the book. It's the opposite of that. Like that's the opposite of what's going on. But I think just trying to be authentic and real, to as much as we can. If that means someone comes to me and says, you hate everybody. I don't hate everybody, but I can't convince you I don't. And I don't need to down that hill. I'm not the biggest, baddest, smartest of anything, but God's call. It's almost like John the Baptist. Go and do what he's wired you to do, and he'll take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm glad you said, because I had a feeling you were going to go the pride route on some of that. And the insecurity too, obviously dovetails nicely with pride. But guys that are out there they don't want to admit that they don't have it all, even if they're okay with admitting that I don't have it all figured out. Like I kind of want to keep that skeleton over here. Like I got that one or two skeletons in my back pocket, right? That I'm good with everything else, but I think I'm going to hold on to that one. I just wonder how we get guys to sort of just drop the entire bit, like, and just put, chips in completely and just be like naked. Like, how do we get guys more naked, spiritually, emotionally? You must have a secret sauce, because I know all your guys are, they come on and they're like, hey, I suck at this. I wish I was better at this. Like, I don't know. Do you have a secret tip for us to how we break down some of those walls?
Let me start with this. I don't want any naked men. So let me just get that point right
out. No naked, literally. Got another literal guy here.
But here's what happens, man. It just time and engagement. You can't expedite those things. It takes time and it takes engagement. So after, if guys stick around, I can try, for example, I've had guys in 2, 3, 4 sessions, and they'll finally say, well, I'm struggling with some stuff. You're like, no kidding. Like, we saw that, we knew that, but it was just a matter of you saying that. So time and engagement. It's like David with his men in the cave. The first guys that David got, they had no money. They were emotionally unstable. They had no friend. Nothing. This guy's running for his life, and that's who God sends him. You fast forward a few chapters later, and these guys are ready to go to battle, and he's gained 200 more. I mean, so what happened? Time and engagement, and then through that, you begin to trust one another. And one of the things that we found in Tribe is, these guys are doing this virtual thing like you and I are doing. We have these little boxes. They're like, do you even have legs? Like, I haven't seen anything from you from the weight. When you meet these individuals in person, to a man, they'll say, it's like I've known you forever. You're like, no kidding, because we have had real conversations that for whatever reason just do not happen at Saturday morning at 9 a.m. over biscuits and gravy. It just doesn't happen. And so men are going to connect where they connect. And so we're going to use whatever means necessary. We'll redeem Zoom. We will redeem Facebook or whatever and say, hey, we're going to, whoever the fact checker is that has to take our group for Tribe, God bless you, Zuckerberg people, but they got to see all these conversations and prayer requests and stuff. So time and engage, it just takes time. If you're trying to start a men's ministry at your church, virtual, whatever, you may get one. And that might be all you get for a while, but maybe your character isn't ready for two. And so you just do that and God will just keep adding to it in time, and I'll see guys that'll get in Tribe and sometimes they just want to, and they'll tell me like, I just want to see what you're doing because I want to do one of these things. You can't carbon copy this. You have to do it your way. You have to do it to your wiring. You have to do it the way that you think God is leading you. And what you do and I do may be radically different, but the same mission. Our approach might be different, but the mission's the same. There'll be guys drawn to you that go, I'd never give that guy 20 cents. That's awesome. Or they'll say, hey, I don't want to be part of that, but I'm going to open my garage up every Thursday night and I'm going to invite 3 guys over and we're just going to read James or whatever. That's great.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, and I know you guys have a retreat once or twice a year. Is it once right now? One time a year? And when is that? In the fall?
So, okay, I'll back. It's in the fall, September 30th, October 1st. And but a lot of guys want to get together and stuff, but listen, I've been in church world for a long time. People have a lot of great ideas, but there ain't no follow through. So we're going to get together. We had a guy from California one year on spring break, take like 2 weeks and just visit like 20 guys. And every one of us is like, man, come to my town, right? Like I drove 3 hours to meet him at Joe Ella's. I'll drive 3 hours for Joe Ella's hot chicken anytime, but meet up with him and some other guys. And what happened was it just kind of kindled that fire of like, no, we do want to meet up. So we had a couple of camp outs. We had one in Kentucky. We got one in Missouri in a couple of weeks. But that retreat, we had 154 guys sign up last year from all over the country. It was crazy. That's sold out. Crazy. It was God did that. It was amazing.
That is amazing, man. I just can only imagine where this thing's going to go. And you mentioned you're not a writer or don't consider yourself one, but I imagine, being a blogger, content for podcast, the curriculum for any of the retreats or tribes even. And I know it's a lot of biblical centered, but you still have to come up with some content, man. Is there anything on the horizon from you in the form of a book at any time soon, even though you're going to say, I'm not a writer? Let's just pretend that you are for a minute. Does that idea interest you at all?
It does. And I don't, and again, that's been, 2 or 3 years. Every once in a while I'll come up and think, I should do that. What I had considered was I had written almost 200 blog posts when I had this, whatever it was, Weebly, and then it moved to a website. So I had about 200 blog posts. And so John, I thought, well, I'll just go back and look at those blog posts and we'll try to turn them into, oh my word, it's painful, man, to go back. God bless anyone that read that and said, hey, he's okay. So there is a chance that could happen down the road. I've kind of like thought about that, like, hey, what could this look like? But because you always have to kind of think about, the now and the next and say, okay, how do you resource someone? And that's kind of what, Tribe was, and Point Man and some of those things was we need ways to help men. You need people in your life to benefit from what's happening online. If you're just looking at posts or you're just buying gear and you're a jerk husband, what good is that? So let's try to put tools in your toolbox to say, go live this out. And so to hear from some of the wives, the difference they're seeing in their husband, I mean, to me, that's gold right there.
Wow. Yeah. you kind of read my mail on that one. I was going to go there and see if you had heard any testimonials from the recipient, I guess, the one who's had a front row seat to some of our dysfunction, as husbands. So I assume you've heard some good stuff. I mean, from the wives, let's say this thing blows up. I mean, you're getting, let's say it just starts booming. Like there's tens of thousands of people that are in Tribe or following Pursuit of Manliness. Like, what do you want them on the street if they're wearing one of your shirts and someone's like, what is that? What do you want their explanation to be about Pursuit of Manliness to a stranger?
Yeah, real simple. I'd say we want to be men of presence. And so if I show up in my backyard or I show up at a grocery store or whatever, that environment should be better because I'm there. And I don't have to announce it. Hey, I'm here, everybody. It got better. No, I'm there. And I want to be the guy. If I walk into a meeting, someone goes, good, he's here. Not crud, he's here. That means he could lead the meeting. He can take out the garbage. He can wash the dishes, or he can serve the tables. Or you just got, you know who those people are in your life, John. You're like, when they're there, we're good. It doesn't matter. You mentioned Clint. Clint's one of those guys. When Clint's around, we're good. It doesn't, we will figure it out. So I want to be men in presence, and I want to work and keep what's been entrusted to us. So I hope whether you're at home, work, your church, whatever, your presence adds value. But not only that, you're working and keeping, you're making them better than you receive them. I should give my wife better back to the Lord than when I got her. I should give my kids better back to the Lord than when I got them. Right. So that's the hope. If listen, man, there's a lot of different aspects of manhood and stuff you could focus on, and life skills and physical fitness and financial freedom and all that. We don't really get into that. Hey, I think the Holy Spirit will take care of some of those things. And there's people that do that. They're much better at, like what you do. You're much better at that than I am. I couldn't do leadership for 3 days in a row, let alone like what you do and write books and stuff. So our wirings are different, but again, the mission's the same.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And before I have you tell us where, to kind of go, and I know it's fairly intuitive, the website, but I do want you to kind of give yourself a shout out and kind of when you release certain things, because I know you got almost a full week of releases that you do now. There's multiple episodes. What's one thing? Because you and I, guys like us that do podcasts or write books, like we're bringing information to empower people, right? We're bringing, hopefully Holy Spirit's working through us and bringing good people on to tell good stories that help good people. We're always facilitating that. What are we working on? What are you working on? What's Jarrett Samuel's, what's the thing on your whiteboard that you're wanting to get better at for the rest of this year? Let's just say, and it's not a New Year's resolution. Don't take me that way, but what is it? Yeah. What is, because if it is, it's probably been erased by April. What is it that Jarrett's kind of looking at like every day? Like, okay, this is my thing. This is what I'm working on in me.
I think there's two things. One would be, I want to be consistent. I had an index card somewhere and I don't have it around me, but be consistent. Man, I could be thriving at 9:30 and be a slug at 6:30. Right? Like, I don't want to give the impression that it's grind from, 6 a.m. to 6. I never get up early. Okay. I know when I need to get up to get where I need to be to do what I need to do, but I'll stay up late. So for me, it's just being consistent from whatever time my feet hit the floor to whatever time you shut it down for the night. And the second thing is, it just hit me the other day. I was walking or doing something, and I just thought, God, give me an undivided heart. I can get in love with a lot of things or a lot of ideas. Unite my heart with yours. I want an undivided heart. And I thought, that's in the Bible somewhere, right? And so I went back, and of course I had to Google it, and it was in Psalms, and I wrote it out. I'm like, okay, so that's been my thing. And when the Holy Spirit lays it on my heart, just give me an undivided heart. Whatever it becomes. At the end of the day, there's two things, John, I believe you're married. So there's two things for you, and there's two things for me that are non-negotiables. My kids will get married someday, and they'll move out of the house, we believe, and do their deal, whatever. Right. But I follow Jesus, and I'm married to my bride. Everything else in this world can change. Where I park my car on Monday, this might be the last time you ever see me on a Zoom call or a podcast. Listen, God will take care of those things, but those two things, they'll never change. And so as long as I'm taking up space on the earth, that has to be my deal. That has to be the most important thing in my life. And if I get that right, everything else will probably fall in line to some degree.
Yeah, for sure. No, I like that. And it comes across, in your work. And so, yeah, dude, I appreciate you doing this, man. I wanted to just pick your brain really. And I know that I don't know how often you're on that side of the desk, but I know you're doing what I do most of the time. And so I liked to have you kind of flip the script and get behind the curtain on who you are and what you're about. And man, it all lines up anyway, because you're that authentic. So where can we go to check out your website, check out your resources, maybe sign up for Tribe? Cause I know it's open through like May, maybe third week in May, something like that. And then about the retreat, kind of those things.
Yeah, it's the pursuit of manliness.com. I don't know about you, but when you do like the intro, you feel like you say that 48 times. So it's the pursuit of manliness.com.
Mm-hmm.
I had a buddy set that website up. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, man. So he set it up for me. The social media links are there. There's YouTube links where 3 times a week I try to put out content there, podcast. Yeah. Quiet Life is just kind of like me sitting in a camping chair in the garage. There ain't nothing fancy about it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Tribe goes till we open it up twice a year. Registration is open now. And then the retreats in the fall. To me, one of the biggest takeaways from that retreat last year, well, 2 takeaways. One was my kids got to see all these people come and talk and whatever.
Oh, wow.
And it was almost like, how often do the people in your life get to see what you're doing? Like you're sacrificing something to do this right now.
Yeah.
And they got to see that. But number 2 was all the men that brought kids, their sons with them. And the fact that their sons are still talking about it, which is cool because we had nothing designated for sons. And my hope is that these sons might start making some friendships with guys with their kid, with each other's kids. Maybe another generation will have a connection. And if they get it 20 years earlier than you and I found it, that's a huge win.
That's wow, dude, that's cool. I bet that was a nice picture to see the next generation from your guys and their kid. Like that's the dream. Like that's the goal. Like that's amazing. Man, if you guys could figure out a way to do that either like a week earlier or a week later, and I know we're getting into hunting season a week later, but dude, my anniversary is on September 30th. I'm like, golly, unless I can bring her to a man's conference, we're in trouble getting to.
We need to have something in Texas. We have so many guys in Texas. We need to do something in Texas for crying out loud.
We'll host it, man. We'll host it. You tell me what to do. We'll get her done. But I appreciate it, man. It's been a pleasure to get to know you even more. And I watch what you're doing. I admire it to the utmost, and just keep crushing it, man. We appreciate it. Any parting shots for my guys here?
No, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I would just tell those guys, man, search the want to, figure out what is it you really want. And man, just relentlessly go after it, especially if it's a God thing, and make no apologies about it.
Yeah.
And God will take care of it.
100%. All right, man. Well, the audience, he's been Jarrett Samuels. We've been last in line. Be blessed.